I was standing in his doorway at 2 a.m., soaking wet from the Georgia rain, wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt and the kind of desperation that makes you do stupid things. Marcus was backlit by the warm glow of his kitchen, and for a moment I couldn't tell if the look in his 53-year-old eyes was concern or something else entirely. "Emma," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "What are you doing here?" I should have had an answer ready, but all I could think about was how my heart had been racing for the past 3 weeks, not from fear, but from something I wasn't supposed to feel for my landlord who is older than my father. Would you have knocked on his door at 2 a.m. if you were me, knowing it would change everything? If stories like this make your heart race, you need to subscribe right now. I share real, raw stories about love, age gaps, and the messy complications of the heart. Hit that subscribe button because what happens next will blow your mind. It started 6 weeks ago when I responded to a Craigslist ad for a room in Savannah's historic district. I was 22, fresh out of college with a useless English degree, and exactly $847 to my name. The ad was simple. Private room in historic home, for $100 per month, mature female tenant preferred. The photos showed hardwood floors, high ceilings, and the kind of southern charm that usually costs twice what I could afford. When I knocked on the door of the Victorian house on Bull Street, I expected to meet some elderly woman who collected cats and complained about noise. Instead, Marcus Whitman opened the door, 6'2" with salt and pepper hair, wearing paint-stained jeans and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. His hands were calloused like he actually used them for work, and his green eyes had the kind of depth that comes from seeing too much life. "You must be Emma," he said, his voice carrying just a hint of a southern accent. "Come on in." The house was beautiful in the way old things are beautiful, worn but dignified, full of stories I couldn't read but somehow felt. Built-in bookshelves lined the living room walls, packed with everything from classics to contemporary fiction. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and I could see through to a kitchen that looked like someone actually cooked in it. "It's gorgeous," I said, meaning it. "Built in 1887, Marcus said, running his hand along the carved banister of the staircase. "I've been restoring it for the past 5 years. Still have a ways to go." He showed me the room, 3rd floor, with slanted ceilings and a window that looked out over the garden. It was twice the size of my dorm room and came furnished with antique pieces that belonged in a museum. "Why is the rent so low?" I asked, because I'd learned to be suspicious of good deals. Marcus shrugged. "I don't need the money. I just don't like the house being empty." There was something in his voice that made me think there was more to that story, but I didn't press. "I'll take it," I said, probably too quickly. "Don't you want to know the house rules first? Do I seem like the type to throw parties or leave dishes in the sink?" He smiled for the first time since I'd arrived, and it transformed his entire face. "No, you don't. But for the record, the rules are simple. Respect the house, respect each other, and don't ask me to fix things at 3 a.m. unless someone's bleeding or the house is on fire." I moved in that weekend with everything I owned fitting into my Honda Civic. Marcus helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs without being asked, and when I tried to tip him, he looked at me like I'd suggested something ridiculous. "We're housemates now," he said. "Housemates help each other." For the first week, we barely saw each other. I was working double shifts at a coffee shop downtown, trying to save money for graduate school applications. Marcus seemed to keep different hours. I'd hear him moving around the house early in the morning or late at night, but our paths rarely crossed. The first real conversation happened on a Thursday evening when I came home to find him in the kitchen, standing over the stove with a glass of wine in his hand and jazz playing softly from an old radio. "Something smells incredible," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Coke au vin," he said without turning around. "My grandmother's recipe. There's enough for 2 if you're interested." I should have said no. I should have grabbed a yogurt from the fridge and gone upstairs to my room like I had every other night. Instead, I said, "I'd love some." We ate at his kitchen table, which was set with actual cloth napkins and wine glasses that looked like they cost more than my monthly rent. The food was restaurant quality, and the wine was something I'd never be able to afford on my own. "You're a good cook," I said, trying to make conversation. "I had good teachers." my grandmother, then my wife. The way he said wife made it clear she was past tense, and the sadness in his voice made me not want to ask follow-up questions. What do you do for work? I asked instead. I'm a novelist. Well, I was. Now I mostly just restore old houses and pretend I'm going to write another book someday. What kind of novels? Literary fiction. The kind that wins awards and sells poorly. He refilled my wine glass even though I hadn't asked. What about you? Besides serving coffee to tourists. I'm trying to figure that out. I studied English Lit, which turns out to be excellent preparation for absolutely nothing. Marcus laughed. I have a master's in English Lit. Can confirm it's mostly useless for practical purposes. But you became a successful writer. I became a writer who got lucky once. There's a difference. We talked until midnight about books, about Savannah, about the strange liminal space of being young and having no idea what comes next. Marcus was easy to talk to in a way that surprised me. He listened like what I said actually mattered, and he didn't offer unsolicited advice or try to fix my problems. When I finally went upstairs, I lay awake thinking about the way he'd looked at me across the table. Not like older men usually looked at me, not with hunger or condescension, but with something that felt like recognition. The dinners became a routine. Not every night, but often enough that I started looking forward to them in a way that probably wasn't healthy. Marcus would cook, I would help clean up, and we'd talk about everything except the obvious, that I was developing feelings for a man who was 31 years older than me and technically my landlord. 3 weeks into living there, I found him in his study at 2 a.m., staring at a blank computer screen with a bottle of bourbon beside the keyboard. Can't sleep? I asked from the doorway. Can't write, he said without looking up. It's been 4 years since I've written anything worth reading. What's stopping you? He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion and alcohol. I don't know. After Sarah died, it's like the words just stopped coming.
Sarah, his wife.
I'd seen the wedding photos on the mantel, a beautiful blonde woman who looked like she belonged in magazine spreads. She'd been younger than him too, though not as young as me. How long has it been? I asked gently. 5 years in October. He picked up the bourbon bottle, then set it down without drinking. She had cancer. Fought it for 3 years before it won. I wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but I was 22 and had never lost anyone except my childhood dog. Instead, I sat down in the leather chair across from his desk. What was she like? Brilliant. Funny. She could make friends with anyone in 5 minutes. His voice got softer. She was 30 when we met. I was 42. Everyone said I was robbing the cradle. The parallel wasn't lost on either of us. The air in the room felt suddenly thick, charged with something I couldn't name. Do you think they were right? I asked. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. I don't know. I thought we were happy. Sarah said we were happy. But sometimes I wonder if she felt like she missed out on something, being with someone so much older. Did you ask her? You can't ask someone that question when they're dying, Emma. It's not fair. I understood then why he'd rented me the room, why he preferred female tenants, why he kept the house exactly as it had been when she was alive. He wasn't looking for a replacement. He was looking for absolution. The next few weeks, something shifted between us. Marcus started asking about my day, my dreams, my fears about the future. I started staying up later, finding excuses to linger in the kitchen or the living room where he might be. We never touched, not even accidentally, but the awareness between us was constant, electric. I started writing again too, inspired by our conversations and the stories he told about Savannah's history. Late one night, I showed him a short story I'd been working on, terrified of his judgment. He read it twice before speaking. You have talent, Emma. Real talent. Don't waste it serving coffee. Talent doesn't pay rent. No, but it's worth cultivating anyway. The world has enough baristas. It doesn't have enough good writers. That night, after he'd gone to bed, I sat in the kitchen and cried. Not because he'd been cruel, but because he'd seen something in me that I wasn't sure was really there. The breaking point came during a thunderstorm that knocked out power to half the city. I was alone in the house, or so I thought, when I heard crying coming from downstairs. I found Marcus in the living room, sitting on the floor beside the couch, holding a framed photo of Sarah. "I'm sorry," he said when he saw me. "I thought you were at work. They sent everyone home because of the storm." I sat down beside him, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "Bad day." It would have been her 41st birthday. His voice was thick with tears he was trying not to shed. "I keep thinking I should be getting better at this, but some days it feels like she just died yesterday." Without thinking, I put my hand on his shoulder. He looked at me with such raw pain that it took my breath away. "Emma," he said quietly, "I need you to go upstairs." "Why?" "Because I'm 53 years old and my wife is dead, and you're sitting here being kind to me, and I'm having thoughts that a man my age has no business having about a woman your age." My heart stopped, then started again, faster. "What if I don't want to go upstairs?" "Then you're even more dangerous than I thought." But I didn't move. Neither did he. We sat there in the dim light from the candles he'd lit, the storm raging outside, and I could feel the last of my self-control slipping away. "Marcus," I said softly. "Don't."
His voice was strained.
"Please don't say whatever you're about to say. I'm 22, not 12. I know what I want." "You think you know what you want, but I'm old enough to be your father, Emma. I've been married. I've buried a wife. You should be with someone your own age, someone who can give you a future that doesn't involve being a widower's second chance." "What if I don't want someone my age?" He set down Sarah's photo and turned to face me fully. "What if you think you don't, but you're wrong? What if in 5 years you realize you wasted your youth on an old man who is too selfish to let you go? What if in 5 years I realize I let fear make my decisions for me?" We were close enough now that I could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, could smell his cologne mixed with bourbon, and something that was just him. "Emma," he said, and my name sounded different in his voice. Desperate. Warning.
Prayer.
I kissed him. For a moment, he kissed me back. His hands came up to frame my face, and I could feel 31 years of life experience in the way he touched me, careful, reverent, like I was something precious that might break. Then he pulled away. "We can't do this," he said, but he didn't let go of my face. "Why not?" "Because I care about you too much to ruin your life." "What if you're not ruining it? What if you're making it better?" He searched my eyes for a long moment, and I could see him wrestling with himself, weighing desire against conscience. "If we do this," he said finally, "there's no going back. You understand that, right? I'm not some college boy you can experiment with and forget about. I'm a grown man with real feelings who's already lost one woman he loved." "I'm not experimenting." "How can you be sure?" "Because I've been thinking about you every day for weeks. Because I look forward to our dinners more than anything else in my life. Because when you smile at me, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, something had changed. "God help us both," he whispered, and kissed me again. This time, he didn't pull away. What followed was 3 weeks of the most intense, complicated happiness I'd ever experienced. Marcus was careful with me in a way that no man had ever been, attentive to what I wanted, patient with my inexperience, generous with his affection. But underneath the tenderness, I could feel his constant struggle with guilt. He'd find reasons to remind me of our age difference, would ask repeatedly if I was sure about what we were doing. In quiet moments, I'd catch him looking at me with an expression I couldn't read, something between love and regret. Should I have recognized what was happening before it was too late to stop it? "Do you think we're making a mistake?" I asked him one morning, lying in his bed while he made coffee downstairs. "I think I'm making a mistake," he called back. "You're just being 22. That's not an answer." When he came back with 2 mugs, his expression was serious. "Emma, I love you. I need you to know that. But I also need you to know that loving you feels like the most selfish thing I've ever done." "Why?" "Because you should be with someone who can grow old with you, not someone who's already halfway there. Because you should be making mistakes with people your own age, not playing house with a widower who doesn't know how to be happy without feeling guilty about it. What if I don't want to make mistakes with people my age? Then I love you even more for saying that, and I worry about you even more for meaning it. That night, I lay awake thinking about what he'd said. Was I shortchanging myself by falling for someone so much older? Was he right that I was too young to know what I really wanted? But when I woke up to find him making breakfast, humming under his breath for the first time since I'd known him, all my doubts disappeared. Whatever this was between us, it was making him happy. It was making me happy. Wasn't that enough? The answer came 3 weeks later, when I came home early from work and found a woman sitting at our kitchen table. She was blonde, probably mid-30s, with the kind of effortless elegance that suggested money and good breeding. She looked up when I walked in, and her smile was polite but cold. "You must be Emma," she said.
I'm Caroline.
"Sarah's sister." My blood turned to ice. "Nice to meet you. Marcus is just upstairs changing. We're going to dinner." She stood up, smoothing down her dress. I have to say, this house looks exactly the same as when Sarah was alive. It's like stepping back in time. Marcus has put a lot of work into restoring it. Yes, he always was obsessive about this place. Sarah used to joke that he loved the house more than he loved her. Caroline's laugh was brittle. Of course, that was before she got sick. Then, he became obsessive about her instead. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. "You know," Caroline continued, "Sarah was worried about him before she died. Worried about what would happen to him afterward. She made me promise to check on him, make sure he was okay." Her eyes met mine directly. She was especially worried that he might do something inappropriate in his grief. The implication was clear, and heat flooded my face. "I see you understand what I'm getting at," Caroline said softly. "Emma, I'm sure you're a lovely girl, but you have to understand, Marcus isn't thinking clearly right now. He's been alone for 5 years, and you're young and pretty and probably remind him of happier times. But this isn't real for him. You're just a distraction." "You don't know anything about us," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I know that he's been bringing flowers to Sarah's grave every week for 5 years. I know that he still wears his wedding ring. I know that 3 weeks ago, he called me crying because he felt guilty about having feelings for someone else." Caroline picked up her purse. "I also know that yesterday he asked me to come tonight because he wanted to end whatever this is between you two, but he didn't know how to do it without hurting you." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "He's upstairs right now, probably trying to figure out how to tell you that this was all a mistake. That he's not ready, that you deserve better, that he can't give you what you need." Caroline's voice was almost gentle now. "Emma, I'm not trying to be cruel, but you need to know that this isn't going to end the way you think it is." I heard footsteps on the stairs, and Caroline smiled that polite, cold smile again. "There he is," she said brightly as Marcus appeared in the doorway. He looked between us, and I saw the guilt written all over his face. Everything Caroline had said was true. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he couldn't quite look at me. "Emma," he said quietly, "we need to talk." But I was already moving toward the stairs, unable to listen to whatever careful, kind words he'd prepared to break my heart. "Emma, wait." I didn't wait. I ran upstairs, threw my things into bags, and was back downstairs in 15 minutes. Marcus was standing alone in the kitchen, Caroline apparently having had the grace to wait in the car. "Please," he said as I headed for the door. "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. Caroline told me everything. She told you her version. Let me tell you mine." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. "Does your version end with us together? Does it end with you choosing me over your dead wife's memory?" His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said, and walked out into the Georgia heat. I spent the next 3 weeks staying on friends' couches, working extra shifts, and trying to convince myself that Caroline had been right, that what Marcus and I had shared wasn't real, was just grief and loneliness and the dangerous combination of an older man's experience and a younger woman's naivety. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at me that first night we'd kissed, like I was something miraculous he'd never expected to find. I couldn't forget the morning I'd found him writing again, the words finally flowing after years of creative drought. I couldn't let go of the feeling that we'd been building something real, something worth fighting for. Which is how I ended up standing in his doorway at 2 a.m. in the rain, with my heart hammering and my pride in tatters, asking him to choose between the past and the possibility of a future. "Emma," he said again, stepping aside to let me in. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here because I love you," I said, water dripping onto his hardwood floors. "And because I think you love me too, and I think you're throwing that away because you're scared." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple. You can choose to stay buried with Sarah, or you can choose to live with me." Marcus closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were bright with tears.
You don't understand.
Caroline was right. I did call her. I did ask her to come. Because every time I looked at you, every time I touched you, I felt like I was betraying Sarah's memory. And now I realize that Sarah's been dead for 5 years, and I've been dead with her. Until you. He reached out and touched my face, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone. "You brought me back to life, Emma. But I'm still scared that loving you means forgetting her." "I'm not asking you to forget her. I'm asking you to make room for me too." We stood there in his hallway, soaking wet and staring at each other, and I could feel the weight of the decision hanging between us. "If we do this," he said quietly, "if we really do this, there will be people who think I'm taking advantage of you. There will be people who think you're making a mistake. Let them think whatever they want. And in 10 years, when I'm 63 and you're 32, and you realize all the things you missed out on, in 10 years, I'll be exactly where I want to be. With you." Marcus studied my face in the dim light, and I could see him weighing everything. The risk, the judgment, the possibility that love might be worth more than safety. Finally, he smiled. The real smile, the one that transformed his whole face. "God help us both," he said, echoing his words from weeks before. But this time, when he kissed me, it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. This time, when he pulled me close, it felt like coming home. 6 months later, I was sitting in that same kitchen, working on my first novel while Marcus cooked dinner and told me about his day. We'd weathered the storm of Caroline's disapproval, the whispered comments from neighbors, the raised eyebrows from people who thought they knew what was best for us. But we'd also discovered something that neither of us had expected, that love doesn't follow rules or timelines or other people's expectations. That sometimes the most unexpected combinations create the most beautiful things. Marcus had finished his new novel, a love story about second chances and the courage to choose happiness over safety. I'd been accepted to graduate school but had deferred for a year to focus on my own writing, inspired by the stories he told and the life we were building together. "Any regrets?" I asked him that night, lying in our bed with my head on his chest. "Just one," he said, his fingers threading through my hair. "What's that?" "I regret all the time I wasted being afraid of this. And now I'm just grateful that you were brave enough for both of us." I fell asleep that night thinking about how strange life was, how the best things often came disguised as the worst ideas. How love could appear in the most unexpected places, between the most unlikely people, and somehow feel like the most natural thing in the world. But what I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until I found the letters hidden in his desk drawer 3 years later, was that Sarah hadn't just died of cancer. In her final weeks, racked with pain and facing the inevitable, she'd taken her own life with pills Marcus had helped her obtain. And in her final letter to him, she'd written, "Find someone young and full of life, someone who can give you the joy I never could. Don't spend your life grieving for me. I want you to live twice as hard to make up for the life I'm leaving behind." If this story moved you, if it made you believe in second chances and unexpected love, then you absolutely need to subscribe to this channel. I share stories like this every week, real, raw, emotional stories about love that breaks all the rules. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because you won't want to miss what I share next. And tell me in the comments, do you believe age is just a number when it comes to true love?